Hello, welcome to another section of this wonderful tutorial. In my previous video, I dealt extensively with control structures, so you can check out that video. For this particular video, I'm going to explain to you functions and scopes. In this video, we are going to discuss about function declaration, function definition, function call, and then return type. Then we take a look at parameters and arguments, talk about types of functions, then we move on to scope and C++. What then is a function? Functions in C++ are blocks of code designed to perform specific tasks. They help in breaking down a program into smaller, reusable, and manageable parts. So for this section, we'll be looking at some examples of functions and our IDE. So let me just clear what I have here. So with this particular section, we'll be dealing with some basic input and output operations. Therefore, we have to include the iStream header file. Then we'll be making use of some functions from the std namespace. So every C++ program have this main function here. So as we can see, one example of a function is this main function. That is a function that we encountered since we began learning C++. Now this main function has a signature. It has a return type of integer and then a name of main. And the name of main in between the curly braces is what is supposed to be implemented or the code that is supposed to run. In this sense, we realize that in line 11 we are having a return of 0. The function is returning 0 because this part of the code tells us that the expected return type is supposed to be an integer. Therefore, I can even replace this with 1, 2, 3, or any other integer of my choice. But by convention, we use 0. That's fine. So then how do you create your own functions in C++ as a programmer? So in C++, we have what we call function declaration. So declaring a function is simply specify the function name, the return type, and the parameters before the function is defined. So say for instance, I want to um, write a function that prints out hello. So in this, I can do this. So the moment I do this, I have declared a function, right? So if you check this code very well, my the return type of my function is supposed to be void. The name of my function is supposed to be print hello. Now this function has not been implemented yet. So for me to implement this function, I just come to this side. The same function signature, I do void print hello. Then in between the curly braces is what is supposed to be done when this function is called. So in this case, I can just say cout hello. As simple as that. So the first line was the function declaration, and then this is a function definition. Now the next question is, how do I use this function in my code? You can use this function in your code by simply making a call to the function. Making a call to the function is calling the function name. So I can simply do print hello with a bracket here. The moment I do this, I'm calling this function. Calling a function simply means you are executing the code in between these curly braces. Good, right? So let me save this file and then recompile the code again with Jane plus plus. So the file is done compiling, so I have my executable here. I can simply, I'm on Linux, so I do this to run my code. So as expected, the code inside the main function is what gets executed. So inside the main function, I have on line 11, I have print hello, and print hello is a function that simply prints out hello as you see here. So print hello, what is inside the curly braces is see out hello. That's why we have hello being printed here. And the return type of the function is void. Void simply means the function does not return any value. As simple as that. Now I can also create a function. This time my function is supposed to accept what we call a parameter. So this function is simply going to take two numbers and then return the sum of the numbers. So I have something like um, the numbers are supposed to be integers. So I'm expecting the addition, the summation of those integers to be an integer. So int add int int weight. So what I've done in line 9, as explained in the for print hello, is I have done what you call, I have declared a function. Okay, so I have declared this function called add, and this part is telling me that the return type of the function is supposed to be an integer, and then the name of the function is add. And then with this inside the bracket here, I have two int. This is telling me that the parameters of the function, the two parameters expected of the function, are supposed to be integers. This is function declaration. Now let me define the function. Defining the function is describing what the function should do. So the same function signature, int add. So for this, I'm saying that the first argument is supposed to be an integer. So int a, int b. Simple as that. Then what's supposed to be done? With this, I'm expecting the function to return the summation of a and b. So return a plus b. Wait. So what this function is doing is the function will return just a summation of a and b. Now, how do I use the function in the code? Let me comment this out, and then as done earlier, I simply have to call the name of the function. That's in my case it is add, and add is supposed to accept two arguments. The first argument has a data type of int, so I can give it any integer value 5. The second argument also has a data type of int, and I can give it 10. So with this function, I'm expecting um, 15 to be returned. So this 15, I can either store the 15 in a variable or just print out the value 15 without storing it in any value. So I can simply do cout. So great. So if I compile the code here, okay, and then run my code, I have 15 as expected. So this function would give different results if we give it different input. However, it will give us the same result if we give it the same input. So say for instance, I give it, let me just copy and paste line 15. So say for instance, I give it -5, I change -5, then I recompile the code again. Let's see the results. So for the first one, I had 15 being printed. For the second one, I had 5 being printed. I had different results because different arguments were given to each function call, right? Now, since this function is returning a certain value, which is an integer in our case, I can make good use of the value that is returned. So say for instance, let me Say for instance, okay, let me just clear this. I'm going to make two calls to the function. So int sum first sum, let me call it first sum, add 4 5. Let me call this int second sum, 10 20. Great. So the function here, add function, is returning an integer. So this integer, I can create a variable that will store the value that will be returned by the function. You can check out my video on variables, data types, and then operators. Simple as that. If you have forgotten how to create variables in C++. So with the line 15, the add function is supposed to return 9, and the 9 will be assigned to the variable first sum. And then with line 16, the add function is going to return 30, which will be assigned to second sum, right? Now let's try to print out the value of first sum and then the value of second sum, right? Just to be sure. Let me save the file and then we compile again. Sorry. So let me recompile. So as expected, I have first sum to be 9 and then the second sum to be 30. Now these values that are returned, I can also play along with the values, right? So I can reuse the values, those values again in the add function. So this I can call first sum, can call second sum. Mind you, they are both integers. So I can simply, as expected, with this 9 will be returned, with this 30 will be returned. This value is returned can be reused in the function again to recompute the sum of first sum and then second sum. So let me recompile again. And now here we go. Now we have 930 and then we are getting 39 here. This function is reusable as explained here. I can reuse it several times that I want in my program. So to clear all out, the values that are given to um, functions, in this case 4 and 5, they are called arguments. And then in defining the function, the name of these parameters A and B are called parameters, but the values that are given here are called arguments. That is all. Now let's move straight to what we mean by the types of functions. We have like here we have three types of functions. We have the built-in functions, user-defined functions, and then inline functions. I'm just going to explain the built-in functions and user-defined functions. Built-in functions are those functions that are provided by the C++ standard library. We have no idea about their implementation. It is already provided by the C++ standard library. And let's come to the user-defined functions. Like what we have here, we have the print hello function and then we have the add function. These functions are not present in the C++ standard library. However, they are functions that we named and implemented ourselves. So we give it a name, user defined functions. Great. Now let's move on to what we mean by scope in C++. So when we talk about scope, and scope we mean the region, okay, or the region in our code where a certain variable is noticeable or is available. As simple as that. So scope variables declared inside a function or block are only accessible there. Now let me show you something here. This main function here, right? This main function has a block. How do you determine a block in a code? Blocks are determined by the curly braces here. So this and this, they form one giant block. Now, if I move to the print hello function, what determines the block is the curly braces as explained in the main function. So this and this, they also form another block. The same for this forms another block. Now, in between the blocks are variables, and functions, right? So in between this, let me comment this out. I have the variable first sum, second sum. Now these variables are only accessible in this block, not anywhere else. So assuming I want to use the variable first sum in this, see, I want to do something like first sum. Mind you, variables are case sensitive, right? So first sum, this spelling is different from this. They'll have different um, names, right? So there are cases to take note of that. So if I do this, you see I have the area identifier first sum is undefined. This is because in between this block, the program does not see any um, variable called first sum. However, if I create a variable here, so int first sum, so when I do see out, so this case I'm having first sum being identified. This is because first sum is available in this block. As simple as that. That is what we call a local scope. This is what we call a local scope, right? Now let's look at the global scope. Now if I declare any variable outside the main function, okay, this variable becomes a global scope. So say for instance I declare int a equals 20, int b equals 30. And these two variables a and b becomes a global scope. They are global scope because they are accessible in every part of your code, right? Now, so what I mean by they are accessible in every part of code is that you can actually make use of them in every part of your code. So I can print out the value of a here without my IDE yelling at me. So you see a is defined. This is because first of all, the code will check for a within this block, within the local scope. Always your program will check for the availability or the accessibility of a variable in its local scope. If it doesn't get the variable in that local scope, it jumps one step further. So the one step further is what we have here. We check if the variable is present. Now it sees a, therefore a is accessible. Now in a case where I comment this out, now my compiler starts to yell at me that a is undefined. Okay, so that is local scope and then global scope. It's very, very important for you to understand scopes in C++. It's going to help you a lot. Now let me do this. Assuming I just create a conditional statement, let's say A is greater than B, and I do something like int y equals 7. I'm not trying to implement any logic. I just want to explain what scopes are. So int y, then see out y. So always I told you that you can identify a block of code when um, a block of code is enclosed in a curly braces. So I have this curly braces here, and this tells me that this particular code belongs to a particular block. So the variable y is accessible in this block. Now let's see what happens if I try to access this variable y outside this block, right? Outside this block. So let's say see out y. Now my compiler is yelling at me because it does not find the variable y defined in its block. So this is a block of it. Okay, this is its block. However, y is defined in this block. So local scope deals with block, and then global scope deals with what is outside a block, like what we have here. That is all for scope in C++. You can also have what we call a namespace scope. I'm not going to explain a name scope in this video. I'll make a different video to explain name scope. That is all for this video. Thank you for watching. Make sure you practice a lot, because practicing makes you understand the concepts better. Thank you.